All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Operational Excellence, ITS631, week number 3. This is moving right along. Um, First of all, I need to acknowledge that I started grading your final Langer appointments early this morning before I had coffee, and I got confused. So maybe 10 of you might have received a feedback that made it look like I was confused as to how you were addressing the assignment. And it was my confusion. I had read the requirements for week 2 and fed those into week 1. And yeah, anyway, my mistake. So I went back and reposted everybody's homework. Overall, homework looks really good. Just want to caution everybody against using study sites out there. My course material, ITS631 material, is posted all over the internet. Um, Not really sure the motivation for that, but it's a shame because it hinders learning. If you just download stuff off the internet, you're just going to be somebody with a master's degree that doesn't know what they're talking about. So that's just unfortunate. But anyway, it is the case. So be careful out there. Don't use copied content and write your own stuff from scratch. You'll be much better professional because of it. Okay, so this week back to 4 chapters, 2 chapters of Bourgeois, 2 chapters of Langer. He is really proud of himself. Good old Langer and the job he did at the Rebel Corporation. So anyway, we'll keep reading his insights and talking about them. So let's get started. Last week, my lecture was an hour and 20 minutes. How could you people let me talk so long? I'll try not to bore you with such. The first two sets of slides here are on topics near and dear to my heart from Bourgeois. So the first one is networking. I got out of software for a little while and into telecommunications and networking back in the mid '90s when internetworking exploded, and then of course the cell phone and all that, and cellular networks. So that was a very interesting time. So here are your objectives from the book. That goes into the history of the internet. Uh, just a research project. The idea was that if we had a nuclear war with the Russians, a nuclear explosion that took out a communications link would not take down the entire communications network because the network could heal itself and send information along a different route that had not been damaged, and that's turned out to be a great evolution of internet protocol and the way packets are routed around. So that's a great chapter review. The history of the internet. You guys aren't probably old enough to remember. I remember when I graduated college right when the World Wide Web uh, exploded in the mid '90s. That's one of your homework things. Is there's a difference between the World Wide Web and the internet. Make sure you understand the difference. There's those are some great terms. If you're not in networking, if you just learned software and didn't really take a networking class, make sure you embrace all the vocabulary terms in there. They're good for anybody in information technology to know. You may remember the dot-com bubble that burst in fall of '99 or so. Like I said, the World Wide Web hit in the mid '90s, '94, '95. It's the first time most of us surfed a web page. We'd used file transfer protocol. We'd used simple mail transfer protocol, SMTP, FTP, Telnet. But the web, HTTP, and web browsers were different. There was a, a protocol before that. I think it was called Gopher. It was before my time. So there were ways to share pages, but was it Tim Berners-Lee who developed the HTTP? That changed everything. So yeah, make sure you get all that. The .com bubble, there was just ridiculous speculation in how far this technology would go and how much money it would make. I think a lot of people learned a valuable lesson, uh, but maybe not. Web 2.0 is where things started getting power to the people and content creation like YouTube and Facebook and blogs and those sorts of things. It went from being a top down content provider, like maybe like an encyclopedia used to dictate to you what knowledge you would be able to learn by what they were willing to put in their encyclopedia. But then things like Wikipedia, where it's bottom up driven, socially oriented. That's Web 2.0. And then make sure you understand email, what a killer app is. Um, could be something as like email was for the internet, and it could be like I don't know, maybe Candy Crush is for, or Facebook is a killer app for the mobile phone. Beg your pardon. Um, so yeah, and then the internet and the World Wide Web aren't the same thing. Make sure you understand the World Wide Web is simply the HTTP part. Um, Web pages, but you've got a lot of other tools that use the internet that don't have anything to do with World Wide Web. Make sure you got that locked in, and I think I asked you for three statements to make me understand that you get it. Use your own language. Don't reword something you found out there. I saw some articles spinning in week two, paraphrasing website article spinning. If you don't know what I'm talking about, email me because I've explained it before, and I believe everyone in here knows exactly what an article spinner is. So make sure it's your own content, okay? Growth of high-speed internet. This was awesome. Uh, Speed went up from analog modems, which dial up and allow you to send a little bit of data over the phone lines. That 56,000 bits per second right there was the theoretical maximum based on the electrical engineering dynamics of the twisted pair phone line. Um, so yeah, guys, you're probably too young to remember dial-up very well, or maybe you do. It was horrible, horrible. It was so slow. You could see the potential of the internet, but it just took so long to download pages. It was crazy. Downloading a 3 meg patch to a game or something could take, half an hour. It was crazy. And then high speed came along. The first high speed I got involved with was called DSL, Digital Subscriber Line, or Digital Subscriber Link. I think it's line. Um, and uh, and that was using your telephone line to get a maximum of about 1.5 meg, which is not bad. And right around the same time, I became acquainted with a T1 line, which is a similar, about a 1.5 meg uh, dedicated line that you could lease from the phone company. You don't see so much of those anymore. That's just really not enough speed to really do anything anymore. And then high speed came in, and I think I was getting maybe 25 megs when I moved back from Japan to the United States and got off dial-up and into Verizon's FiOS network, fiber optic system, fiber to the house. And then, the world happened. You could stream, you could download patches. Oh, it's just crazy, and it's on all the time. You don't have to hear dial up. It's like bam, it's on. As soon as you turn your computer on, it's connected to the internet. That took me a minute to wrap my head around. So anyway, yeah, growth of the internet, and then of course wireless networking. Here's the 3G, 4G is what we're on. 5G is going to be even faster. It's good to know the difference between those. 5G is a lot more closer cells. The towers, the antenna have to be a lot closer, so there's a higher infrastructure cost, but it is faster and will enable even more, augmented reality, all kinds of crazy stuff. And then Bluetooth. Make sure you realize you might want to do a little bit of basics. That might be worth watching a 5-minute video on YouTube or something where Bluetooth. is a wireless protocol. Seems like it's up to maybe a megabit. Uh, it's not a high speed protocol like 4G LTE or the 802.11 series, or 5G. It's a cable replacement technology. It allows you to use, earphones. That's only, a voice channel is only 64 kilobits per second. So if you've got 1,000 kilobits per second, you can do quite a bit. But it's not a high speed data connection. You wouldn't want to stream video, for instance, over Bluetooth. So that's why you generally see over Wi-Fi. Another wire, yeah. Oh, I just got a Canon laser printer that connects to my Wi-Fi router, and now I can print from any PC or phone or tablet in the house. So wireless networking, yeah, is really coming along. I know if you're under 30, it seems like it's always been here, but for the rest of us, it's really uh, fascinating how much it's changed. Okay, voice over IP, same thing, guys. Voice. It's like they call it a network convergence, because everything basically that's a signal can be digitized. There's no reason to have separate phone infrastructure and network infrastructure. So we're you're seeing a lot more companies that are starting to put in voice over IP, and that allows you not only to just make calls. Like a phone was dumb. You could dial a number and talk, and that was it. But voice over IP allows you to exchange like directories and do all kinds of cool call forwarding and cool features and everything. So yeah, I'm thinking, 10 years from now, you'll no longer have really telephones or private branch exchanges. And the idea inside of a corporate intranet, you don't need to memorize long telephone numbers. You can kind of just pick somebody off of a directory and hit boom, hit go and talk to them. So VoIP, yeah, VoIP's pretty cool. It saves a lot of money compared to the traditional phone service. And then, there's a little diagram here that shows you from inside the corporate intranet out to an extranet might be where a corporation is linking together the beg your pardon. Sorry, I was doing a little home improvement project and I got some dust in my throat from cutting ceramic tile, actually. So I'm a little choked up. I swear I'm not suffering from any new virus. um, okay, so there you go. Now, client server, some of you may be working in this area in software. This is kind of before web browsers got to be as powerful as they are today. Used to be, if you wanted to do a cool database application, you had to install a client program on a workstation, on a PC or a Unix box, and that client application would talk over the internet to the database in the back end. Kind of anymore, you're starting to you still see client applications, but man, things are getting to become the kind of the opposite of that, which is a web-based application where you can do software as a service. Generally, you don't need any client software when you're doing cloud-based computing. And as anybody in web development, as you know, these browsers are getting to be a flexible client application all in and of itself, so that you don't have to install any software on the client's location. You can just run with it as a web page. And then, of course, the intranet is visible only to employees kind of behind the firewall generally. Extranet, you might be able to link multiple geographically separated locations via a dedicated leased line, maybe um, a virtual private network that's encrypted, so none of the packets can be sniffed and used by your enemy or someone in an intelligence agency. Then you got, of course, cloud computing, data storage capacity on the internet. That's the simple. Everybody thinks about data storage on cloud computing, but we all know from last week's discussion it's much more than that. I posted a cloud computing, according to me, post that I use in several of my classes. Let me know if that doesn't work. I've had a few cloud engineers tell me that for explaining it to people that don't know cloud computing, it's a good simple explanation. Of course, it leaves out complexities by intentionally. I don't want it to be complex. I want it to be simple. Let me know if you had any questions on that. And then we got into information systems security. Now, some of you guys are in this. You're in information security. I've been exposed to it somewhat from the sidelines. I had to know something about it because you can't do information security without knowing like the OSI model and what protocols are and what vulnerabilities exist at different layers of the network. So, but I'm no expert. I've never worked specifically in information security. But here's your objectives. There's a bourgeois text is really clear. It's a very simple text, um, and then a lot of that bourgeois chapter 6 applies to you as an individual computer user as far as password security and things you can do, physical security to keep your accounts safe. Here is your triad. You want to keep things confidential so that they are not exposed to people that you don't want them to be. It's available so that you can uh, have the data available to yourself, to coworkers within an enterprise, and like that would be like prevention of a distributed denial of service attack. Will take down the availability of your site. So if you're able to mitigate that risk, that's one way to assure availability. And then the integrity, you want the data to not be damaged, um, or dirty, or otherwise modified from its original source. And you want to know for sure that uh, whoever you think created it actually created it. So, and then that gets into the tools, authentication and access control. Um, Authentication and non-attribution. That's the other thing is or attribution. You want to be able to attribute all network traffic to a user. That's the problem to me with the open internet is it's anonymous and you can't authoritatively or confidently attribute actions to different people. You can create fake email accounts and fake social media accounts. You can burner phones. You can spoof phone numbers. You can spoof IP addresses. It's nowhere near engineered enough on the public internet to do any of these information security controls. And then make sure you read these sidebars. Make sure you read the whole chapter, guys. It's a lot of time, but it's great information. And here, remember, when you talk about encryption, make sure you know what you're talking about. Some people will say, that companies have to practice security by encrypting their data, and they have no idea what they're saying or what that means. Make sure you understand encryption before you talk about it. And that pretty much goes for anything, right? Um, there's ways of bulk encrypting files on a drive. You need to know what that means. There's ways to encrypt traffic over a network link such that the actual traffic is difficult to decipher within the network link, but once it gets to the other end, you've got the code, the key to the code, so you can decrypt these packets uh, quickly and use them for their intended purpose, whether that's you know streaming video that gets encrypted over the wire and then unencrypted on the other end in real time so that you can have like video teleconferencing and Skype chats and stuff like that. Um, so there's a short section on encryption. I'm not going to talk about blockchain and Bitcoin because all I know about it is from the hype of Bitcoin. So we don't have an assignment on that particularly, but it is an important factor, and I'm still learning about it, so I don't want to bore you with my thoughts, other than to say that there's really nothing to keep somebody from making bit buck or bit dollar or bit rupee or bit anything. There's nothing that I know of that truly makes Bitcoin worth anything at all, because that infrastructure is public. It's public domain. You could create another cryptocurrency, and in fact, there are other cryptocurrencies. The the I believe the future of blockchain isn't in a fad like Bitcoin. I think it's in using it as a uneditable, trackable ledger for transactions. Now, in Bitcoin, that's the transaction of buying and selling bitcoins, but in it could be something else. It could be your bank account transactions, other things. Um, and again, that's all I'm going to say because I'm not an expert and I don't want to confuse anybody or say anything that's wrong. Oh yeah, backing up information. Uh, you know, this has always been important. It gets less important um, with cloud computing, but that needs to be thought of as a backup as well. A real time off-site mirror of a database, whether it's a relational database or file storage or whatever, is a backup really, because if a fire happened in a data center, but it's got a real-time mirror, as soon as the fire extinguisher system goes off and the electricity gets unplugged and all those servers get fried, all of the transactions within just a few, milliseconds, have been replicated across the network somewhere else. And that's the alternate or hot sites on that last bullet. But then there's other things, like when if you're storing files locally on your laptop, and not preserving them, like using OneDrive, I encourage you to do it. Use the cloud. It has saved me several times. And then you got uninterruptible power supply. That's another thing. You could be in the middle of an editing session, and kick the power, have a just a lightning strike somewhere miles away can cause a spike in your electrical power. That's one thing. Those are $50 to $100. Of course, real reliable, uninterruptible power supplies at the data center level are much more expensive than that. So good stuff in Bourgeois, Chapter 6. Firewalls and intrusion detection systems. I had to study these academically. I managed a network control center, but I had like 85 technicians that all had super deep knowledge of the different areas. I know a firewall basically protects your a network from certain ports and protocols. You want to deny access to certain IP addresses for certain ports, um, under certain protocol, and certain ports work on certain protocols. And that's a whole course in TCP/IP, guys. So I don't think we want to get into that. But a firewall is able to sort of filter IP traffic. Of course, there are other vulnerabilities, but an intrusion detection system sort of listens to the network and uh, looks for key issues going on in log files. They're getting smarter and smarter. Beg your pardon. Intrusion detection systems, but again, they are uh, somewhat reactive as opposed to proactive. I think artificial intelligence is going to change this whole scenario. If they don't change the whole way the internet works, I'm afraid AI is going to just tear the whole thing down. Both uh, AI attacks and AI defenses are going to be just going on at the speed of light because they're over fiber optic cable links. Har har. Okay. And then, of course, physical security. If you can get access physically to the network, you're very often in a world of hurt. And people tend to leave clues about their accounts. They'll write usernames and passwords, uh, tape them underneath their keyboard. That's the first thing a white hat hacker consultant will do is with it when it comes to physical security is go in and look and see if people are leaving their access badges laying around maybe, or usernames and password lists easily findable on their desks, those sorts of things. Um, training's the biggest thing. The human being is usually the biggest vulnerability in any information system. So uh, awareness training. Um, I've been in an environment where you had secure computing going on inside the building, and in order to really secure things, we had removable hard drives and lockable network links. It literally the fiber drop to your desk terminated in a lock box that you could then disconnect from and lock that box so that someone after hours could not, without a great deal of trouble, could not physically get into the network. And your hard drive for your computer was locked away so that the computer wouldn't even boot with the secure information on it because your hard drive's in a safe. So there are lots of physical measures. Um, I don't know if disabling USB drives. I worked my last job in the military. All USB drives were disabled because USB drives themselves, thumb drives, are the biggest vulnerability known to man. Really, you plug one in, and if it's got malware on it, it's in. That's how Stuxnet got propagated. So the theory goes. Anyway, there you go. Physical security. Bourgeois talks about the balance between a system being usable. Like for example, if you had to have a password that was 32 characters long, and you could not have a letter next to each other, it had to go letter, special character, number, letter, special character, number, letter, special character, number, and times 32 characters, and you had to change that every day. Well, you probably never have to worry about a password hack, but the system would be unusable because no one could remember their password. So just remember, there's a balance between security and habit. Why you have the system in the first place. Okay. And then personal information security. There's some good tips in that section of Bourgeois. All right. So then we get to Langer. Okay. I'm not going to belabor the Langer text. This is, I will say again, graduate level learning. If you are reading Langer and you are understanding what he's saying in his role as a consultant and what he's talking about, organizations learning, teams of people learning, and organizations learning how to learn and changing the way they learn and changing the way they address the human and technical aspects of organizational learning. If you're reading this and you're understanding it, awesome. You are genuinely learning at the graduate level. If you're not, well, keep trying because it's good information. And it's interesting if you can pick out when he's bragging and versus when he's not. It's interesting. I would be hesitant of anyone who was so close to a problem because Langer talks about things that happened, when he came in to Revell as a consultant, when he got hired as the IT chief, we went away. They tried to go back, and oh no, he comes back in, saves the day. Um, I'm a little leery. I don't know Dr. Langer. Never heard of this book before this class. I would just caution you to be careful of of people relating their own experience as if it's the live all end all. It's a piece of data, but it's not necessarily you've got bias in your own experience. So anyway, um, we will talk about that a little bit more when we talk about discussions. I want to hear more from you and your experience and less Captain Obvious statements. Okay. So like I said, I'm not going to belabor um, Langer. He goes into a couple of organizational learning theories, which are frameworks, kind of like there are software development methodologies, frameworks. You need to kind of understand that and people try to make a name for themselves, researchers try and make sense of things where they don't see um, an established methodology, and they'll come up with uh, different, like I said, frameworks. Plan, do, check, act. Everybody different. There's different signal. The waterfall. Requirements, design, code, test, implement. Um, there are many, many, many models for this, and Langer goes over a couple of of organizational learning, and how he specifies a process that's 20 years old or so. Learn, focus, align, execute. It's a cyclical process. I'll let you read it. Um, the any organization that learns and adapts and moves out fast tends to stay ahead of its competitors. I would wager that Google, Apple, corporations like that are maybe a little better than RIM. That was the BlackBerry. I think they were a good technology company, but they were not paying attention to what was going on in the marketplace. I don't know that Microsoft is even a great learning organization. They've got some really smart people there, but they don't seem to lead. Um, but they've got an active enough following and enough confidence in their brand that they've been able to continue. But their significance is far less than what it used to be. Remember when they were? You probably don't remember. They were trying to break up Microsoft. I don't know. I don't know that they learn. I think they adapt to what's going on out there, but I don't know that they're necessarily. Um, uh, I don't. I'm picking on Microsoft. I never worked there. But this whole uh, um, organizational dynamism that he talks about. Make sure you're picking on that up. Um, the A learning organization tries to share information, so that and expects everyone to learn from everyone, and to know what's going on, know their place, but not just their own place. They understand where the organization's going and how they fit into that organization. And generally speaking, you've got to be a lot more flat and social. You'll see Langer discussing all these technologies and concepts. Um, uh, you got to make sure your communities of practice are talking with each other's, and sharing best practices. He goes into this, um, how standard operating best practices get documented and shared among people and inculcated into the organizational culture, and that sort of that cycle. Um, if you've read my dissertation, I'm out there on ProQuest. I did a lot of this kind of work. Um, I can't remember. I'm gonna have to go back if I shared my dissertation with you guys. I may not have. Um, anyway, yeah, I did some work with learning organizations and enterprise social media. Like I said, I'm not gonna and experience and how that matters to the individual, how it matters to the organization, how that can be enhanced, and how it can be um, uh, detracted from. So this slide's particularly important inside of social media and how and other electronic communication and how employees talk to each other. Then there's quite a few models. Langer is really good at bringing in outside research and putting that in context of what he's saying. Um, Smart guy. This is graduate level learning. Like I said, if you get Langer, you are doing really well. Okay, and then linear development and learning approaches. Make sure you read that section. There's three sections that we talk about in our assignments for Langer, and those are the ones I really want you um, to to go on. And it's a maturity model, just like software capability maturity model. Talks about how you're just kind of throwing things together at the beginning, but then your processes become more documented and repeatable. It's the same way with learning, a learning maturity model. There's lots of maturity models out there for different types of things. And again, there's your responsive organizational dynamism, um, cultural assimilation into the organization, and strategic integration into the way ahead for the business. And then there you go. There's another nice model. Okay. So next Langer chapter, um, the role of line management. Remember, um, Langer's assessment of line management is kind of like a director of a department, and these folks are critical they set the tone, they set the culture. They are a leader of leaders, and they manage processes, but they manage people is the main thing. They manage leaders, they build leaders. The first job of a leader is to build more leaders, and that's what Langer goes into, and then he talks about different levels of managers and what they're responsible for, and supervisors, and then individual workers. So read that section carefully, because we're going to use it in your assignments this week. Um, yeah, a business unit or a department director. And they definitely worried about return on investment, and they have supervisors reporting to them. So these are leaders of leaders, and hopefully they're thinking like executives. And if you see one of these and they don't seem to be someone that you can see getting promoted and moving up, um, keep an eye on them, see what happens to them, because that's what we're talking about here is manager executives in training. And then like I said, he goes into um, some of the particulars of first line managers. Make sure you read this section closely, and then read the section on knowledge management. Um, this is there are lots of basics on knowledge management. Again, this is something that if you're not sure what knowledge management is, maybe watch a 10-minute video on the process of knowledge management. You've got creation of knowledge, and then you got to transfer it to everyone else through some sort of KM system, where it doesn't become organizational knowledge; it remains individual knowledge. And then you got to figure out a way to use it, and that usually requires some kind of process to utilize it. So you've got to have some sort of a way in a maturity model for people to consume that knowledge. So anyway, yeah, make sure you've got a handle on these KM terms, because we'll talk about it. Um, that's what I want you to talk about this week in your discussion is knowledge management in your own experience, not something you read on the internet. I want you to talk about your personal professional life. Okay. And then change management. Yeah, this is things are going to change, and how well an organization adapts to that, and has a process to look at, the people, processes, products, technologies. They've got to have a way of looking down the road, doing strategic forecasting, because change is inevitable. Okay. Um, I won't go into this. I want to get to the assignments for this week. There you go. Yeah, social networks, information technology. Like I said, I did my dissertation on this. It's a great platform um, if your management uses it correctly, and change management and resistance to change is managed appropriately. Lots and lots and lots of studies out there showing the value of social media. Okay, so here are our. I got a slide on your different assignments this week. Um, uh, Make sure you look at the knowledge management cycle 5.3, and then read page 116 through 120 carefully, and make sure you know what knowledge management is, and Langer's approach to it. And then Your discussion question, of course, there are more tips and instructions on the discussion board itself in the classroom than on this slide, but I want to make sure that you are talking about your own experience. So you can use I. When I worked at a software company, we used a knowledge management system that was really effective. I want you to talk about you in a workplace setting. Don't just share Langer's definitions. In fact, don't share anything about Langer. Okay? We've all read the book. We've all read Langer. Don't post background material and expect it to result in anything. Tell us, discuss with us your experience. And when you reply to your fellow students, don't be Captain Obvious and just say, knowledge management is critical to the success of any organization, because we all know that. Okay, don't add a few points. I saw that quite a bit in previous weeks. Ask questions, and you don't need to repeat what they said. That's it. Don't just summarize what the person said. They know what they posted. Okay, talk like you would in a workplace setting. Professional language, but this is discussion. I expect academic language in your papers, but in the discussion board, I expect you guys to be for real. Okay? So let's see some of that this week. It's frustrating for me because I do these lectures and then I don't see the result that I'm looking for in the classroom, and it's frustrating for me because it makes me feel like you're not learning anything, which is what I'm here for. All right. So there's your discussion. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. Now, what you will turn uh, in a Word document, hopefully just a couple pages here, guys, uh, are our usual study questions and exercises. Um, uh, Make sure you're including the study question. I know it'll make your turn it in your safe science score go through the roof. But make sure you're using headings so I can tell what the question is as you're addressing it. Some of you did really well writing last week's homework more or less as a term paper or 2-page paper without using any headings. But it's okay to use headings for bourgeois, especially. It's okay to cut and paste the the questions themselves. Okay. And then Langer. All right, we got 2 questions for Langer. Um, uh, how how learning changes over time impact the organizational culture. As the organization learns, how does that impact culture? And then what's the impact of that cultural change on the success of IT projects? So this is graduate level writing. Okay. So I'll be looking for 1 page on those 2 points. Okay. 1 page, not 5. Okay. 1 page. And then the next page, the chapter 5, there's your instructions. Note the various roles in the organizations and how they're similar and different, and then how innovation technology management shapes how we communicate among coworkers. Okay, communication amongst coworkers, and this is all in Langer. Um, uh, so make sure you're addressing the instructions very closely. Okay. I get assignments turned in that are kind of just writing up something. It's not really addressing the instructions. Um, Focus, focus, focus. And 1 page for each of these chapters. All right. No more. No more than 1 page for each chapter. And not a whole lot less. Some people turned in 5, 6, 7 pages for what should have been 2 pages, and it's just an attempt to overwhelm your reader with too much information. You need to write succinctly, succinctly, and laser focused on the instructions. Okay, so that's that. And of course, there's our references. And as always, email me with any questions or concerns. and I look forward to seeing you in class this week.